Maya cried loudly in the middle of the night as Lena walked around the living room, holding her close to her chest. The apartment that used to feel warm and welcoming now felt too big and cold. The beige walls were still marked by the places where paintings used to hang. They were reminders of everything Adrian had lost. "It's going to be okay, my love," Lena whispered, her voice sad and unsure. Her eyes were tired and she looked in the mirror, not recognizing the woman she saw. Her hair was messy and dark circles were under her brown eyes. She looked like she had given up, something she never thought would happen. Outside, the maple tree in the yard swayed gently in the breeze. Lena watched the leaves move under the streetlight. She remembered when Adrian had chosen this house because of that tree. "It's like us," he had said. Strong, resilient, able to face all seasons. Now the idea felt sad and ironic to her. Her phone buzzed again. It was her sister Isabel trying to call her for the 5th time that evening. Lena knew she should pick up the phone, but her pride stopped her. How could she admit that sometimes she thought the best thing for Maya might be to give her up for adoption? What kind of mother thinks like that? Lena whispered to herself. Maya's crying grew louder, like she understood her mother's sadness. The doorbell rang, breaking the silence. Lena froze. Who could it be at this hour? She looked through the peephole and saw Adrian standing outside in a dark coat. He looked tense, like he was carrying a heavy weight. With trembling hands, Lena opened the door, unsure if she should be happy or angry to see him. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice softer than she wanted it to be. Adrian stepped forward, his eyes on Maya. "I couldn't sleep," he said quietly. "I needed to see you two." He looked at her with eyes full of emotion. "Can I come in?" Lena hesitated, but Maya's cries made her step aside. Adrian came in, and the whole atmosphere in the apartment felt different. It was like the house was coming alive again. "She's sick," Lena said, holding Maya and rocking her gently. "Nothing I do seems to help." Adrian walked closer, unsure. "May I?" he asked, holding out his arms. Lena handed him Maya, watching as the little girl immediately grabbed her father's shirt. "Hey, princess," Adrian whispered, his voice soft and loving. "Daddy's here now." Maya stopped crying, her sobs slowing until she was quiet. Lena watched them. Memories rushed back. How she first met Adrian at the university library, their wedding in the garden, the promises of forever. But now she had to ask, "Why are you really here, Adrian?" He looked at her with intensity in his eyes. "I can't live without you two," he said. "Every day away from you is torture. I was an idiot to think I could run from my responsibilities, from my fears." Lena felt her heart tighten. "Fears?" she asked. "What fears could justify leaving your pregnant wife?" "The fear of not being good enough," he said, his voice soft but steady. "Of being like my father, of failing you two the way he failed our family." The room fell silent again, except for Maya's breathing, calm now in her father's arms. Lena felt her defenses begin to fall, but she knew that pretty words didn't always mean real change. "How can I trust you again?" she asked. "How can I be sure you won't leave at the first hard moment?" Adrian carefully placed Maya in her crib, then turned to face Lena. For the first time, she saw tears in his eyes. "I'm not asking you to trust me right away," he said quietly. "I'm asking for a chance to prove day after day that I've changed, that I understand what really matters." Lena looked out the window at the maple tree. The leaves still danced in the night wind. Like the tree, their relationship had faced hard seasons, but maybe, just like the leaves return every spring, there could be hope for them. "It won't be easy," Lena said, her voice steady even though her eyes were filled with tears. "I know," Adrian answered, taking a step toward her. "But you two are worth any battle." That night, as Maya slept peacefully in her crib, Lena allowed herself to think that maybe love, even when hurt, could find a way back home. The next morning, Lena was trying to focus on work when her secretary, Beverly, knocked on the door. "Dr. Lena, your sister is here." Before Lena could say anything, Isabel burst in. "So it's true. Adrian is back, and you didn't tell me? Lena sighed and closed the patient's folder. Dom, I've barely had time to think about this myself. Think? Isabel sat down with her arms crossed. The man who left you when you were pregnant shows up out of nowhere, and you need time to think? The answer should be a big no with a restraining order. Lena felt her sister's words hurt. It made her think about the fears she had been trying to ignore. It's not that simple, Lena said. Isabel leaned forward. It is simple. Don't you remember how I found you on the bathroom floor with that ridiculous letter from him saying you had to figure things out alone? Lena remembered that night clearly, the crumpled paper, the fear of giving birth alone. No, I haven't forgotten, she whispered, but you should have seen how Maya reacted when Adrian held her, Lena said softly. She calmed down as if she knew he was her father. Isabel wasn't convinced. Babies calm down with anyone, she said. Lena walked to the window, trying to make sense of her feelings. He's trying, Dom, she said. He's trying because he wants to be a part of Maya's life. Trying? Isabel raised an eyebrow. Does he think buying milk for her will fix things? It's not about the milk, Lena said, feeling confused. It's about him trying. He wants to change. Isabel stood up and came closer. As your lawyer and sister, I think we need to set some rules and limits, but I don't think you should let him in so easily. Lena shook her head. No, I don't want to turn this into a legal fight. Not yet. The conversation was interrupted by another knock on the door. Beverly appeared again. I'm sorry to interrupt, but Mr. Adrian is here. Lena and Isabel exchanged a look. Send him in, Lena said. Adrian entered, holding a shopping bag and wearing a suit. He looked like he had come straight from work. He smiled at Isabel, but it was a little unsure. Hello, Isabel, he said. Adrian, Isabel said coldly. I deserve that, he said. Then he turned to Lena. I just came to bring the milk, and I was wondering if I could come by later tonight to say goodnight to Maya. Lena nodded. She's usually calm around 8. Thanks, Adrian said softly. And Lena, I know I don't deserve your trust yet, but I promise it will be different this time. After Adrian left, Isabel sighed. You're putting yourself in a vulnerable position. I know, Lena said, holding the bag Adrian had left behind. Inside was milk for Maya, a small teddy bear, and a note that said, to help you sleep when I'm not around. Isabel crossed her arms. He's trying to buy his way back, isn't he? It's not about that, Lena said. I'm more afraid of not giving him a chance than getting hurt again. Isabel hugged her. Just promise me you'll protect yourself and Maya. I promise, Lena whispered, even though part of her felt like she was already opening her heart to him again. That evening, at her mother Elena's house, Lena felt the usual tension. Dinner was always a formal event. Elena's sharp eyes studied Lena across the table. So, Elena began, Adrian is back in town. Lena's stomach twisted. Yes, Mom, he came back a week ago. And you're letting him see Maya again? Elena's voice was more like an accusation than a question. Mom, Lena said quietly, he's Maya's father. He's trying to make things right. Elena didn't believe her. Some things can't be fixed. Men like Adrian always come back when they feel guilty, but they always leave again. Lena's father, Victor, spoke gently. Maybe we should give Adrian a chance. Elena looked at him. It's about the pain. How much pain will they cause before they leave again? Lena didn't answer at first. Then, softly, she said, Adrian came to dinner. He cooked, cleaned, and stayed with Maya when she had colic. He did all of that because he wanted to. Elena seemed ready to argue, but Lena went on. And yes, Mom, I'm letting myself hope, because if we don't believe people can change, what example do we set for Maya? Elena sighed and stood up to hug her daughter. I don't want you to suffer again. I know, Lena said, hugging her mom with Maya between them, but sometimes the risk of suffering is less than the regret of not trying. The rest of dinner passed quietly, with only Maya's happy smiles and soft giggles breaking the silence. Lena was getting ready to leave, and Elena held her for a moment. Lena, she said, her eyes shining with almost tears. Promise you'll keep your eyes open. Lena kissed her cheek and smiled. I promise, Mom, but I also promise to keep my heart open. On the way home, while driving through the bright streets of Boston, Lena thought about her mom's words. Her phone buzzed with a message from Adrian. Did Maya sleep well? I bought that storybook you mentioned. Can I come by tomorrow and read it to her? Lena smiled, feeling both hopeful and a little nervous. In the back seat, Maya was peacefully sleeping, not knowing about the complicated feelings of the grown-ups around her. Lena thought maybe that's what real love needed. Courage to take chances, even if it might hurt, strength to trust even when you have scars, and understanding that second chances are not just about forgiving others, but also about believing in love again. At Adrian's office, things were busy on a Friday afternoon. His best friend, Graham, a university professor, walked in without warning. Graham's raised eyebrows and serious posture told Adrian this wasn't just a casual visit. Graham started speaking right away. You come back after being gone for 8 months trying to win back your family and you didn't even think to tell me? Adrian put down his pen. Max, let me finish, Graham interrupted, holding up his hand. I was the one who helped when you ran away. I was the one who checked on Lena every week to make sure she was okay. I helped hide you. Adrian added bitterly. You helped me hide. Graham sat down heavily in a chair. You asked me to do it, and it was the biggest mistake I ever made as your friend. There was silence between them, only broken by sounds from the hall and the air conditioner. Adrian walked to the window, looking out at the Boston skyline. You're right, he finally admitted. I owe you an apology. I owe a lot of people apologies. Graham sighed. It's not just about saying sorry, Rafa. You have to really understand what you're doing. Lena is not just your ex-wife anymore. She's a mother now, protecting both her heart and Maya's. Adrian turned to look at Graham. Do you think I don't think about that every minute? That I don't regret missing the first few months of my daughter's life? Then why are you back? Graham asked, leaning forward. What's different now? Adrian walked over to his desk and pulled out an old photo. It was a picture of him as a 5-year-old sitting on his dad's lap. Remember when I told you about my dad? Adrian asked, handing the photo to Graham. He left us, saying he wasn't ready to be a father. Graham understood. That's why you disappeared for a few weeks? Adrian nodded. I got a letter from him before he died. He wrote about how he regretted not being there for me, and I realized I was following in his footsteps. So that's why you're back? Graham asked, surprised. No, Adrian said firmly. It's to be the father my daughter deserves. It's to be the man Lena believed me to be. Graham stood up and put a hand on Adrian's shoulder. And how do you plan on doing that? One day at a time, Adrian answered. He picked up his phone and showed Graham a picture of Maya. Last night, I stayed up with her for 3 hours because she was colicky. It was the most important 3 hours of my life. Does Lena know about your father? Graham asked. No, Adrian said. Not yet. I don't want her to think I'm making excuses. You need to tell her, Graham warned. She deserves to know what changed. I will, Adrian promised. But first I have to prove this change is real. A clap of thunder from outside caught their attention. Dark clouds were quickly moving in. Storm's coming, Graham said, not just outside. Adrian started gathering his things. I promised Lena I'd pick Maya up from daycare. She has a patient she needs to see. As he walked out the door, Graham called after him. Just don't mess everything up this time. Maya doesn't deserve what you went through. Adrian stopped at the door. Do you know what the last thing my father wrote in his letter was? He looked at Graham. Time never turns back. Believe me, Max, I learned that the hard way. As Adrian drove through the rain, his phone rang. It was Lena. Maya has a fever. The daycare just called. I'm on my way. Shall we meet at Dr. Chen's? Lena asked. Yes, Adrian replied. We'll meet there. When they got to the doctor's office, Maya was very sick and Lena looked worried. Dr. Chen, the pediatrician, examined Maya. It's a viral infection, he said after checking Maya's temperature, but it's nothing serious. Just some rest and medicine. Adrian and Lena both said they would stay home with Maya, taking turns caring for her. That night, Adrian insisted on driving them home, saying Lena looked too tired. Lena asked if he wanted anything. Chamomile tea with lavender, he offered with a smile. I remember how it helped you when you were anxious. When they got home, they settled into a quiet routine, Adrian making soup while Lena bathed Maya. That night, after Maya finally fell asleep, Adrian sat on the sofa, holding something in his hands. Lena walked over and asked what it was. He handed her an old photo of him as a child with his father. My father died 3 weeks ago, he said softly. He wrote to me before he passed away. He regretted not being there for me, and I realized I was becoming like him. Lena's heart hurt for him. But you're here now, she whispered, taking his hand. He nodded. I am, and I'm not going anywhere. Just then, Maya woke up crying. They rushed to her side together. Over the next few days, Adrian stayed with Lena and Maya as they helped Maya get better. The lines between the boundaries they had before were starting to blur. It was becoming harder to keep things just friendly. One Saturday morning, Lena watched Adrian and Maya play outside. The scene felt so natural that it made her heart ache. But then the doorbell rang. It was Isabel, Lena's sister. She brought papers about shared custody and alimony. Lena didn't want to talk about it. Not now, Dom, she said. This isn't the time. But Isabel was firm. Yes, it is. Adrian is practically living here. You need to set legal boundaries before things get complicated. Lena could hear Adrian singing a lullaby to Maya in the yard, and she felt torn. I know you want to protect me, but these last few weeks have shown me something important. Some decisions have to come from the heart, not from legal papers. Isabel looked frustrated. He's using his father's death as an excuse, and you're falling for it. No, Adrian's voice came from the door. It's not an excuse, it's a warning, a reminder of what I don't want to become. He walked into the kitchen, standing respectfully away from Isabel. I understand your concern, but I'm not here to hurt Lena or Maya again. Isabel's tone softened a little. Well, fine, but words aren't enough. Actions speak louder. Lena nodded. I agree, and my actions are what matter now. Adrian surprised both Lena and Isabel when he said, instead of signing papers right away, give me 3 months. I'll show with my actions that I've changed. If, after 3 months, you still think it's necessary, I'll sign whatever agreement you think is fair. Lena watched the conversation carefully, her heart beating fast. It was the first time she had seen Adrian face the results of his past mistakes. Isabel looked at him for a long time, then turned to Lena. Is this what you want? She asked. Lena stared out of the window at the big maple tree that had been part of so many memories in her life. I want to give our family a chance. Not for me, not for Adrian, but for Maya. She deserves it. Isabel agreed after a moment. 3 months, she said, picking up her papers. But I'll be watching. After Isabel left, Lena and Adrian were quiet in the kitchen. They could hear Maya's soft breathing from the baby monitor as she slept. Thank you, Adrian said quietly, breaking the silence. Thank you for believing in me. Lena turned to face him. It's not just about believing in you, Adrian, she said. It's about believing that people can change, that families can heal. Adrian nodded. I'm learning to believe too, she added with a small smile. One day at a time. That afternoon, as they watched Maya sleep, Lena thought about how love isn't about forgetting the past. It's about growing together, even with the past scars. Those scars could be reminders of both the pain and the healing. The sound of the rain outside Lena's office window was a soft song on that Thursday afternoon. Her last patient of the day, an 8-year-old boy dealing with his parents' divorce, had just left. And Lena was thinking about her own life. Dr. Lena Beverly, her assistant called, interrupting her thoughts. Vivienne's online. She says it's urgent. Lena sighed, readying herself for what might come. You can transfer her to me, she said. Her mother's voice was tense when she spoke. Lena, I just heard that your father is organizing a business dinner and invited Adrian. They've been talking about a project for the company. Lena froze, her mind racing. What project? She asked, half feeling nervous. Victor says that Adrian approached him 2 weeks ago with a proposal to renovate the offices, her mother explained. Did you know about this? Lena's heart sank. No, she replied. He didn't tell me anything. That's exactly my point, her mother continued. What else is he hiding? Just then, Lena's phone buzzed with a message from Adrian. Can I come by later? I need to talk about something important. I have to go, Mom, Lena said, her stomach in knots. I'll talk to you later. That evening, after putting Maya to bed, Lena waited for Adrian on the balcony. The rain had stopped and the maple tree's leaves were wet, glowing under the street lamp. Adrian arrived exactly at 8 o'clock, looking nervous but still in his work suit. Before he could sit down, Lena asked, Why didn't you tell me about the project with my father? Adrian froze for a moment, then sighed. I was going to tell you today, he said. I wanted to wait until it was approved first. Lena stood up, upset. Are you using our reconciliation to get contracts? She asked. No, Adrian said, shaking his head. It's not like that. Let me explain. He paused, trying to find the right words. The project is pro bono, he said. I'm offering to do it for free. Lena blinked in surprise. What? Why? She asked. Adrian explained. I heard your father talking about the office needing renovations, and I offered to help for free because I didn't want you to think I was doing this for money or connections. I just want to prove that I'm here for you and Maya. Lena sat back down, feeling exhausted. Why didn't you tell me before? She asked quietly. Adrian sat next to her. Because I know how proud you are, he said. I didn't want you to think I was trying to buy my way back into your family. You're not, Lena said softly. Adrian turned to face her. I've spent the last 8 months regretting everything, he said. Every success I had felt empty without you and Maya. I don't need contracts or money. I just want my family back. Lena felt something break inside her, but she didn't know if she could trust him again. I'm afraid, Adrian, she whispered. I'm afraid to trust, to feel again. I know, he said softly, and you have every right to be afraid. But I promise, this time will be different. They both looked towards the bedroom, hearing Maya stir in her sleep. Adrian smiled. She smiled at me this morning, he said. She really recognized me as her dad. Lena smiled, tears welling up in her eyes. She always has, she said. Adrian took a deep breath. Lena, I know we agreed to take things slow, but every day with you and Maya feels like I'm coming back to life. Lena felt her heart race, the emotions overwhelming her. I feel it too, she said quietly, and it scares me how much I feel it. Adrian held out his hand, inviting her to take it. After a moment of hesitation, Lena held his hand, and they stood together in silence. One day at a time, he asked softly. One day at a time, she agreed. Later, at Lena's parents' mansion, the air felt heavy. Lena adjusted her black dress and watched Adrian play with Maya on the living room floor. We can still cancel, Adrian said, noticing her nervousness. No, Lena replied. We need to face this, all of it. When Isabel arrived to look after Maya, her face was cautious but approving as she saw Adrian with her niece. Remember, Isabel said to Lena, keep your eyes open. The drive to the mansion was quiet, but Adrian kept holding Lena's hand, comforting her with small gestures. When they arrived, her mother greeted them with polite coolness, and they all sat down for dinner. Dr. Victor, Lena's father, began the dinner by saying, I'm impressed by Adrian's offer to do the project for free. Adrian spoke up, his voice steady. I'm not doing this for business reasons, he said. It's my way of showing I'm committed to building something new, not just at work, but with my family too. Lena felt her throat tighten as she listened to him speak so honestly. Dr. Victor nodded. I understand now, he said. It's not about the project, but about proving yourself. Vivienne, Lena's mother, finally spoke. What about your other fears, the ones that made you leave? Adrian answered calmly. Every day I wake up afraid of not being good enough. But I've learned that courage is facing those fears anyway. Vivienne wasn't convinced. Words are easy, she said. You're right, Adrian agreed. That's why I'm not asking you to trust my words. I'm asking for the chance to prove myself. Later, in the back garden, Lena's father talked to her. You know, he said, sometimes people need to lose themselves to find themselves again. Lena wasn't sure if she believed that, but she watched as her mother put her hand on Adrian's arm in a small but meaningful gesture. I'm still afraid, Lena admitted to her father. He nodded. Fear is normal, but don't let it stop you from being happy. On the way home that night, Lena felt the air lighter between her and Adrian. As they drove, Adrian squeezed her hand. Thank you for giving me a chance to prove myself, he said softly. Lena looked at their hands, thinking about how something so simple could mean so much. I have fears too, she said, looking at him. Fears of trusting, of giving myself up again. Then let's face them together, he said, smiling. One day at a time. At home, they found Isabel asleep on the couch, holding Maya. It was so peaceful that they just stood there for a moment. Adrian whispered, I think your sister is starting to like me. Lena smiled and shook her head. Don't push it. That night, after putting Maya to bed, Lena realized that love isn't about not having fears. It's about choosing someone to face them with. And maybe that's the greatest test of courage of all. Maya's first birthday was just around the corner, and it had been 2 months since Adrian came back. Lena was planning the small birthday party when she got an unexpected phone call. This is the St. Joseph Clinic, the voice said. We have an emergency with Mr. Adrian Torres. Lena felt the world stop. What happened? She asked. There was an accident at the construction site. He's conscious but needs surgery on his arm. Lena rushed to the hospital, holding Maya in her arms. When she arrived, Graham was there, looking worried. He's stable, Graham said, but he'll need surgery. Lena sat down, her legs shaking. What happened? She asked. Graham explained. He fell when we were inspecting the office project. Lena was scared, but the doctor soon came in to say the surgery was successful. He's asking for you, the doctor said with a smile. In the hospital room, Adrian was pale with his arm in a cast. But when he saw Lena and Maya, his eyes lit up. I'm sorry, he whispered. I've ruined the birthday plans. Lena's heart ached. You could have died, you idiot. But Adrian just smiled softly. But I didn't, he said. I'm here. In the days that followed, Lena watched as Adrian tried to do everything with only one arm, even the simplest things. He never complained. One evening, while helping him shower, Adrian said, When I was falling, all I could think about was you two, all the moments I could miss. Lena paused. Adrian, she said. But he continued. I realized something important. I don't want to live without you anymore. I want to be there for every moment, every challenge, and every joy. Lena's heart raced. Are you asking me to come back? She asked. I'm asking to rebuild our family, for real this time. No more running away, no more fears. Lena thought of all the nights she spent alone, all the tears she shed, but also of the last 2 months with Adrian, how he had been so patient, so loving. It won't be easy, she said finally. We still have a lot to figure out. I know, he agreed, but I'm ready, and now I know it's worth fighting for. From the next room, they heard Maya wake up. Lena helped Adrian get dressed and dry, each touch full of meaning. I'll get her, Lena said. But before she left, Adrian asked, The answer is yes, right? Lena smiled and nodded. Yes. The next days were full of new routines. Adrian officially moved back in, though he stayed in the guest room for now as they figured everything out. Isabel, surprisingly, was the first one to bring moving boxes. Don't think this means I trust you completely, she warned Adrian, but you're making an effort, and that counts for something. Maya's birthday party was small but perfect. They celebrated under the maple tree in the backyard. It was a simple celebration, but it felt like everything was finally coming together. Lena was watching Adrian, who still had his arm in a cast, trying to help Maya blow out her birthday candle. Lena's heart filled with love. Just then, her mom, Aurelia, came over and handed her a glass of champagne. "Do you know what impresses me most?" her mom asked. "It's not that he's back, but that he's willing to do the hard work of gaining trust back." Lena was curious. "How do you know it will work this time?" Her mom smiled, watching Adrian awkwardly try to cut the cake with one hand. "Because this time, you two are building something new, not trying to fix something broken." Later that night, after everyone had left and Maya was asleep, Lena found Adrian on the balcony, looking at the stars. "What are you thinking about?" Lena asked, sitting next to him. Adrian looked at her. "I'm thinking about how I almost lost everything and how lucky I am to have a second chance." Lena rested her head on his shoulder. "Sometimes it takes almost losing something to understand how much it means." "Or someone," Adrian whispered, kissing the top of her head. The next morning, the smell of coffee filled the kitchen. Lena watched Adrian, now out of his cast, trying to make pancakes with one hand while holding Maya with the other. It was a moment of normal family life, but it felt like a big win for them. Lena walked over to help. "You know," she said, "there are baby seats." Adrian smiled. "I know, but I like having you close. It makes up for lost time." Then the doorbell rang. It was Graham with blueprints for a project, looking worried. "Sorry to drop by unannounced," he said, "but we need to talk about the office project." Lena took Maya out of the room, and she could hear Graham talking to Adrian in the kitchen. The project was delayed because of Adrian's accident, and the investors were getting upset. "We need someone to take over while you recover," Graham said. "I can do that," Adrian said. "I just need—" "No," Lena interrupted, walking back in. "You're still recovering." Adrian looked surprised. "But this project is important," Lena softly interrupted. "Your father, my father, they'd understand. They'd respect your decision to focus on your health and family." Graham looked at Lena with interest. "She's right, Adrian. I have another idea. You can still supervise the project from home while you fully recover." Adrian seemed unsure, but after Graham left, the kitchen was quiet. Maya played with her toys, not understanding the tension. "Why is it so hard for you to accept help?" Lena finally asked. Adrian sighed. "Because I feel like I need to prove something to your family, to you." Lena moved closer and touched his face gently. "You don't have to work yourself too hard to prove your worth. You're proving it every day in little things, like making pancakes, like being here." He tried to joke. "Like being present?" "Yes," Lena said, "like choosing us over work." "Different from my father," he added, "and different from how I was before." Lena nodded, taking his hand. "You know what convinced me you've changed? It wasn't big promises, it was seeing you wake up in the middle of the night to calm Maya, even when you were in pain. You choose time with her, even with 100 things to do." Adrian pulled Lena closer. "I'm still afraid," he whispered. "Afraid I'm not enough." "I have fears too," Lena said. "Afraid to trust completely, to let my guard down." "How do we deal with that together?" he asked. "One day at a time," she answered simply. Just then, Maya started clapping her hands, wanting attention. They both laughed, breaking the serious mood. "I think someone's hungry," Adrian said, turning to the pancakes. Lena smiled. "I'll make them. You tell her a story." Adrian sat on the floor by the playpen, always starting a story about an adventurous princess. Watching him, Lena felt sure that this was what mattered, small everyday choices. Later, while cleaning up, Adrian stopped and said, "You know, when I ran away, I thought I was looking for freedom or an easier life. But now I realize everything I needed was right here." Lena smiled as she handed him a plate. "Sometimes we need to get lost to find our way back home." Adrian looked around the kitchen, at Maya sleeping on the couch and at the tree outside. "Yes, this is home," he said. That night, for the first time since his return, Adrian didn't sleep in the guest room. There were no big promises, just a quiet look between him and Lena, and a small nod from him. It was a small step, but an important one in their journey of rebuilding. As they lay side by side with Maya sleeping in the next room, they both understood that real strength isn't about never falling down, but about how we choose to get up. Sometimes getting up means accepting help, recognizing your limits, and trusting in the healing power of love. The next morning, Lena was cleaning out her drawer when she found her old wedding ring. It used to be a symbol of broken promises, but now it felt different. She sat on the bed, playing with the ring when Adrian came in and said, "Maya's finally asleep." He stopped when he saw what she was holding. "Oh, I found it by chance," he said. Lena spoke softly. "I was thinking about how everything has changed." Adrian sat down next to her and said, "Some things stay the same." She smiled and added, "Like how you smile when you're nervous, or how your hands always look for something to do when you're anxious." Adrian gently took the ring from her hand. "And some things have changed completely, like us." "Like us," he agreed, looking at the ring. "You know, I still have mine." Lena was surprised. "You do?" He got up and went to his backpack. From inside it, he took out a chain with a ring hanging from it. "I could never get rid of it. Even in the hardest times, it reminded me of what I lost and what I hope to get back." They sat in silence, and outside, the wind whispered through the maple trees, their leaves now red. Lena hesitated and then said, "Where is this leading?" Adrian sat closer to her. "Where do you want it to lead?" She sighed. "It's not that simple." "Why not?" he asked softly. "Why can't we just..." Just then, the sound of Maya's cry came through the monitor. Lena stood up, but Adrian touched her arm. "Let me go," he said. "I really need to practice that lullaby." Lena watched him go, still holding the ring. Through the monitor, she could hear Adrian's soft voice singing to Maya, an old song that her mother used to sing. The sound of the phone brought her back to her thoughts. It was Isabel, her sister. "The 3 months are up next week," Isabel reminded her. "We need to discuss the next steps." Lena sighed. "Dom, no, listen. As his lawyer, I need to know if we're going to formalize shared custody or if he's living here." Lena interrupted. "He's been sleeping in our room for 2 weeks." There was silence on the other end of the line. Finally, Isabel replied, "And you're okay with that?" "I'm more than fine," Lena said, surprised by her own certainty. "I'm happy." Later that evening, after an emotional phone call with her sister, Lena found Adrian on the balcony. He was sitting on the steps, watching the stars. "Did Maya sleep?" Lena asked as she sat next to him. "Like a little angel," he said, smiling. 3 stories and 5 songs." Lena laughed and leaned her head on his shoulder. "You're spoiling her." "Impossible not to," he smiled. Then he became serious. "Lena, about earlier..." She interrupted him, handing him something. It was her wedding ring. "I think it's time we did this right." Adrian looked at the ring, then at her, his eyes full of emotion. "Are you sure?" "I'm not suggesting we go back to exactly what we were," she explained. "That wedding, those promises, they belong to the past. But maybe we can make new vows." Adrian nodded. "Start again with everything we've learned." Lena agreed, tears welling in her eyes, this time really knowing what in joy and in sorrow means. Adrian took the chain off his neck and removed his own wedding ring. "So Lena Matthews, will you rebuild a life with me, not as we were before, but as we are now?" "Yes," she whispered, letting him slide the ring onto her finger. "And do you, Adrian Torres, accept this second chance, with all the challenges and joys it brings?" "With all my heart," he replied, as she placed the ring on his finger. The moment was interrupted by a little cry from the monitor. They both laughed. "I think Maya wants to join the celebration," Adrian said. "Our little family," Lena smiled, standing up. "Imperfect, but ours," he agreed. As they went upstairs to attend to Maya, Lena realized that sometimes love isn't about keeping old promises, but about having the courage to make new ones. Maybe in this new beginning, there was an even deeper kind of love, one tested by time, strengthened by pain, and renewed by the choice to be together. Not out of obligation, but out of true desire. The first Christmas after their reconciliation arrived, with soft snow falling over Boston. The house was decorated with colored lights, and the smell of gingerbread filled every room. Lena was adjusting Maya's red dress when the doorbell rang. The first guests, Vivian and Victor, entered with gifts and that formal air that never completely left them. But this time, there was something different. Vivian looked at Adrian helping in the kitchen, wearing a Christmas apron. "Do you need any help?" she asked. "Actually, yes," Adrian said, smiling. "Could you help me with the sauce? It's my mother's recipe, but I can never get the seasoning right." Lena watched, excited, as her mother and Adrian worked together in the kitchen, sharing tips and stories. Victor approached her, holding Maya. "You know what impresses me most?" he said softly. "It's not the change in Adrian, but the change in all of us, like a family learning to grow together." Isabel arrived soon after with Graham. "Don't even start," she warned when she saw the smiles around the room. The evening went smoothly, full of laughter and warmth. Maya, now walking more steadily, wandered among the adults, getting attention from everyone. At one point, Lena found Adrian standing by the Christmas tree, watching the scene. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, holding his hand. "About how I almost lost all of this," he said honestly. "Last Christmas, I was alone in a hotel in Chicago, full of regret." Lena squeezed his hand. "But you came back." "I did," he agreed. "And this time, I understand the true meaning of home." Dinner was served at the living room table, now expanded to fit everyone. Elena made a toast. "To family," she said, her voice breaking. "Not just the one we're given, but the one we choose to be, to second chances, and to the courage to take them." Adrian stood up, holding Maya in his lap. "If I may," he said, "I'd like to make an announcement." Lena looked at him, confused. This wasn't planned. "A year ago, I was lost," he continued. "Today, I'm exactly where I should be." He took a small envelope out of his pocket and handed it to Lena. "I bought the house," he said, "not just as an investment, but as a promise. A promise that this time, I'm here to stay." Lena opened the envelope and felt tears fall down her face. The house, the one they had been renting, was now officially theirs. And there was more. "The office project is complete," Adrian said, turning to Victor and Elena. "But I'd like to propose an expansion, a space for children's therapy run by Lena." Lena stood up, speechless. "Of course," Victor said, smiling. "It would be an honor." Isabel wiped away a tear. "I think I can tear up those custody papers now," she said, trying to stay composed. Everyone laughed, feeling free and happy. Graham raised his glass to the Taurus Matthews family. Later, after the guests had left and Maya was asleep, Lena and Adrian stood on the balcony, watching the snow fall. The maple tree in the yard was bare and looked like it was sleeping under a white blanket. "You know what I thought today?" Lena said, snuggling into Adrian's arms. "What?" he asked. "How circular life is," she said. "A year ago, I was out here alone, wondering if I would ever be happy again. Now, Adrian encouraged. "Now I understand that happiness isn't a place you reach," she said. "It's a journey, with ups and downs, mistakes, and successes." Adrian kissed the top of her head. "And you're happy with our journey?" Lena turned to face him, gently touching his face. "I'm happy because we chose to do it together. Really together this time." From the baby monitor came the soft sound of Maya stirring in her sleep. Inside the house, the Christmas tree lights flickered. Under the silent snow, Lena and Adrian sealed their new beginning with a kiss. Not a fairy tale kiss, but a real one, full of history, learning, and true love. Because sometimes a happy ending isn't the end of the story, but just the beginning of a new journey. a journey built not on perfect promises, but on the daily choice to choose each other, grow together, and turn every challenge into a chance for deeper love. If you had to choose the most important part of the story, which moment would you choose and why? Would it be when Adrian came back after his accident? When they put the rings back on? Or Christmas with the family together? How does this moment show your thoughts about love, forgiveness, and second chances? Thank you for watching. If you like this story and want to see more, please subscribe to our channel. That way you won't miss any new videos. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and share what you think in the comments. We love hearing your thoughts. Also, don't forget to check out the other videos on our channel. We'll see you in the next story.